The mystery of the Ouija board. Everyone knows about the mystical Ouija board used to communicate with lost spirits. The game is believed to move on its own after we ask a question. It consists of a flat board and a triangular piece of wood called a planchette. The Ouija board has the sun and moon on the left and right sides of the board, the letters A to Z as well as numbers from 0 to 9, and the word goodbye at the bottom of the board. Ouija can be played by multiple people. Players surround the board, place their fingers on the planchette, ask questions, and wait for the planchette to move itself in the direction of the number or letter to give an answer. In Europe, this game was very popular in the Middle Ages. But did you know that the notoriously creepy Ouija game was actually a clever businessman's trick in the Middle Ages? This time we will talk about Ouija not only in terms of its spooky story, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. A similar tool to Ouija was discovered 1100 years after Christ in historical documents during the Song dynasty. They called it Fuji. Fuji also has the same purpose as Ouija, which is to communicate with spirits. Even at that time, there was a special Ouija training center called Quanzhen, led by Wang Chongyong. When the Qing dynasty came to power, the practice was banned. The method of spirit seances was also found in ancient India, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome. Historian Robert Murch, who has been researching Ouija since 1992, says it is difficult to find an origin for the game in American culture. During the Civil War from 1861 to 1865, belief in mysticism increased. People wanted to communicate with their husbands, fathers, or sons lost in battle. Before the war, in 1848, the claims of the Fox sisters from rural northern New York hit America. They said their medium could receive messages from spirits who answered them with a knock on the wall. This was supported by the claims of a celebrity sister and other spiritualists in the new national press. The story circulated throughout the state, resulting in a large number of adherents of spiritualism. According to Christian dogma in the second half of the 19th century, spiritualism did not contradict Christianity, which means that the religion allows people to do spiritual sessions on Saturdays and not hesitate to go to church the next day. Such activities were considered comforting and acceptable at a time when the average lifespan was less than 50 years. Many women die in childbirth, children are affected by dangerous diseases, and men die on the battlefield. Mary Todd Lincoln, wife of President Abraham Lincoln, once conducted a spiritual service at the White House. At the time, she was grieving after her 11-year-old son died of a fever in 1862. In 1886, the Young Associated Press reported on a phenomenon at spiritualist camps in Ohio, a talking board. The board was similar to the forerunner of the Ouija, with numbers, letters, and a tool similar to a planchette. This article inspired a fertilizer entrepreneur who was starting a business in real estate, Charles Kennard. He was the second son of a successful merchant in Delaware. In the 1880s, Kennard moved to Maryland's eastern shore and developed a secret recipe for fertilizer made from a mixture of bones. At first, his fertilizer business thrived, but due to drought, debt, and competition, his factory in Chestertown was sold. From the articles he read, he saw a promising business opportunity. He brought along a Prussian immigrant. E.C. Reich had his office located on the 4th floor of Chestertown's small business district. Reich worked as a furniture maker but later switched to being a coffin maker and undertaker, an unusual career. Kennard also brought along a local lawyer named Elijah Bond. They agreed to work together. They founded the first Ouija manufacturer the day before Halloween, Kennard Novelty Company. Bond brought his sister-in-law, Helen Peters, with her. According to Bond, Peters was a strong medium. It was Peters who named the game by the name we know today, Ouija. According to some incorrect popular sources, the name comes from a combination of French, oui meaning yes, and German, ja. Some other sources say it is from ancient Egyptian, which means good fortune or luck. But according to the letters of the inventors of this Ouija, the name comes from a famous writer and women's rights activist, Ouida Bergere. When Helen named the board game, she wore a necklace with her name on it. But she misspelled it as Ouija. When she got the patent for Ouija, the chief officer at the patent office asked them to prove that Ouija could spell her name. Peters managed to convince the patent officer, making the patent officer give him the patent with a pale and trembling face. Ouija received its patent on February 10, 1891, under the category of toy or game. The first patent did not explain how the game worked and how it functioned. This vagueness was part of the marketing strategy to get people interested in buying the mysterious and creepy Ouija. Since the patent was granted, the first advertisements for Ouija were found in newspapers. The ad said, "Ouija, the wonderful talking board." The Ouija was also described as a place to ask about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy that promised never-failing amusement and recreation for all the classes, and connected the player between the known and unknown, the material and immaterial. Ouija was sold for $1.50 at the time. The board was made of wood. As Ouija grew in popularity, the Kennard Novelty Company also expanded in 1892. 7 factories were built in different cities, including 2 in Baltimore, 2 in Chicago, 2 in New York, and 1 in London. In 1893, Kennard and Bond left the company due to internal pressures related to the old adage about money changing everything. The company was taken over by Bond's partner, Colonel Washington Bowie, who owns a majority stake. In 1889, he granted exclusive rights licenses to the 2 remaining original investors in the company. His decision resulted in a huge fight in the pages of the Baltimore Sun over who made the board. They sold their shares to William Fuld for $1 because of that problem. At the time, Fuld himself had been working as a Bond employee and shareholder. In 1901, Fuld redesigned the Ouija. However, he did not want to be called the inventor of the Ouija. In the 1910s and 1920s, the Ouija game was very popular amidst the devastation after World War I, the prohibition of alcohol, and the Jazz Age mania. During the Great Depression, the company built another factory to fulfill the booming demand for Ouija. A New York department store sold 50,000 Ouija boards in 1944. As time goes by, many companies market products with the same design. Fuld sued many companies, even suing his brother, Isaac Fuld. Their fight started when Fuld kicked Isaac out of his company. Their quarrel was so serious that Isaac made a big decision. He dug up his daughter's grave to move it from the Fuld family grave during the renovation of the cemetery. The 2 families didn't speak for at least 96 years. Fuld faced lawsuits and claims until his death in 1927. After Fuld's death in 1966, Fuld's company was purchased by Parker Brothers. Parker Brothers moved the Ouija production base to Salem, Massachusetts, a town famous for the tragedy of witch hunts. In 1967, Ouija was headquartered there and sold 2 million boards. Ouija managed to beat the sales of Monopoly, which was also popular at the time as an escape from economic problems and fantasy fulfillment. In 1991, Hasbro acquired Parker Brothers, and to this day they still produce hundreds of thousands of Ouija boards. The large number of Ouija boards sold supported the birth of spiritual books, experiments, and strange occurrences related to the game. In fact, the image of the Ouija has always been complicated. The mysterious oracle was marketed as a fun party game. The aim was to make the atmosphere more thrilling, or even more romantic for couples. The planchette, which must be moved by the player's hands while sitting across from each other, creates a sweet sense of intimacy. Another image of the Ouija was painted by Norman Rockwell, an illustrator whose drawings were always inspired by everyday life. He painted for the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in May 1920. The painting depicts a man about to propose to a woman. They are sitting opposite each other with a Ouija on their table. Strange, and perhaps now funny stories about Ouija have also been written about in American newspapers. In 1920, newspapers reported on crime fighters who relied on Ouija boards. They wanted to solve the murder mystery of a New York City gambler, Joseph Burton Elwell. Instead of getting answers from the board, they frustrated the police. Another story comes from the New York Times in 1921. A Chicago woman suffered from mania and was sent to a mental hospital. She told her doctor that she had been told by Ouija spirits to leave her mother's corpse for 15 days, then bury it in the backyard. The second story came from Buffalo, New York City in 1930, where 2 women had killed another woman at the urging of a Ouija board. In 1941, the New York Times reported that a 23-year-old man working as a gas station attendant in New Jersey joined the army because of a clue from a Ouija board. In 1958, a Connecticut court ruled to disregard the Ouija board will of Helen Dow Peck, who left $1,000 to 2 of her former servants, and $152,000 to John Gale Forbes, a spirit who contacted Peck through Ouija. Some book authors claim that they wrote their works dictated to them by the spirits of famous people. Author Pearl Curran in 1916 claimed to have written her book by being dictated by the spirit of an Englishwoman who lived in the 17th century, Patience Worth. The following year, Curran's friend Emily Grant Hutchings practiced the same thing. She wrote her book entitled Jap Heron, a novel written from the Ouija board while communicating with the spirit of Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain, the famous American writer who had recently died. Since they are small writers, their claims can be dismissed as a marketing strategy. But there are other famous authors who have made similar claims. The famous poet and writer Sylvia Plath wrote her book Dialogue over a Ouija board spontaneously in 1981. Another famous poet and author, James Merrill, said that he consulted with spirits via Ouija while writing his epic poem in 1892. The 560-page collection of poems, The Changing Light at Sandover, contains messages from W.B. Yeats, his friend Maya Deren, and Archangel Michael. He won the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Critics Circle Award. Merrill later confirmed that he used the Ouija board as an amplifier of his literary thinking, not for communication with spirits. Ouija regained popularity in the 1973 amidst economic uncertainty and its use as the plot of a movie, especially in the movie The Exorcist, starring actress Linda Blair. The movie, released in 1973, tells the story of a family that uses a Ouija board to communicate with Captain Howdy, a demon that possesses souls. Since then, there have been 20 movies and numerous other paranormal-themed TV shows using Ouija, including the 2014 Ouija movie which made it to the box office. The impact of the movie's popularity has included increased sales of Ouija boards and protests from evangelical Christian groups who banned Ouija boards in 2011. Previously, in 2001, Christian groups, especially Roman Christians, burned Ouija boards together with Disney's Snow White and copies of Harry Potter. A spokesperson for the organization Human Life International once forbade Hasbro, the company that produced Ouija, from selling it. However, it is still being produced and distributed. While in the paranormal community, Murch says its reputation is very questionable. He was once asked to keep his Ouija board at home because it was considered to be too scary for people.